There's a lot of danger to self-diagnosing, especially when it comes to being, a mental health advocate, for example, and sharing your experiences and what you've been through. Uh, Self-diagnosing is something I think a lot of people are very, very guilty of. I've even been guilty of it before. The difference, though, is with all the access that we have to the internet and how much we hear other people share, it's easy to go, well, you know what, I have that too. Or that must be what I have. We've all been there before. ADHD is a very common one. I share a lot about ADHD. I was diagnosed originally ADD. Later on, I was diagnosed ADHD. One of the funny things is you can tell when people are self-diagnosing themselves because they'll say, well, I have ADD and ADHD. Yeah, you can only have one or the other. You don't actually have both. That's where you know somebody is self-diagnosed. And it's extremely dangerous to self-diagnose too, because if you self-diagnose, you sometimes will not get the proper treatment you need. That's the whole problem about it. That's why it's so important to go to a therapist. And if you don't agree with your therapist, find a different therapist, get another opinion, trial and error to find the right therapist. Because to find out what you really are struggling with is so important to get either the proper medication, the proper tools, the proper boundaries set up to help with that. We don't know exactly, what we're going through. And sometimes when we're struggling, let's face it, we are afraid of doctors in a lot of cases. We don't want to talk to somebody else and we think that we're smarter than doctors are. So we go to the internet and we find out exactly how dumb we are. A lot of times people don't realize, if you self-diagnose yourself, for example, with ADHD, because you have a lot of energy, well, that's not what ADHD is. If you have a lot of energy, it doesn't mean that you have ADHD or ADD. It's all mental, is what a lot of people don't realize. It has nothing to do with your energy level. It has to do with how your brain's firing off. If you have a bunch of fireworks in your brain and you can't focus on a single thought, that's ADHD. And it mirrors very similar to bipolar. So if you're self-diagnosing yourself, you can end up with the wrong diagnosis. And the worst thing is then you start trying to do treatments or even over-the-counter treatments for something that you may not even have. There's a very different medication setup for ADHD versus bipolar. And if you are treating the wrong symptoms, they're not going to get any better. They're going to get a lot worse. And you can even make it, 10 times fold worse when it comes to messing with benzos or it comes to messing with stimulants like Adderall, because for some people, they are an addictive drug. And Adderall is a stimulant. For someone with ADHD, reacts differently. That's why it's so dangerous doing the self-diagnosis. The one thing I have found is, I've been online before and I've looked up different things to go, well, maybe this is something that I should ask my doctor about. That's the whole thing, is maybe I should ask my doctor about it, or this makes a good point. Maybe I should bring it up to my doctor and ask them about it, because PTSD isn't being triggered by words. PTSD is actually having a trigger that sparks a flashback that literally you relive that moment. You are not in reality. And that's what, for example, the smell of blood does for me. Finding out that there is proper treatment for it, like EMDR therapy, which was designed for first responders and for military, has a 77% effective ratio. And a lot of other people, even with trauma cases, have started using it. It has great results. If you look it up, EMDR therapy. If you have PTSD and that's what you've been diagnosed with, it is a great treatment option. So going through and working with your doctor is everything versus trying to be your own doctor. Because a lot of times we're going to misdiagnose ourselves. We're not going to get the correct treatment that we need for ourselves, and we're going to struggle a lot more. Also, it can bring on stigmas. I mean, you have no idea how many people I've talked to that will tell me, well, they have anxiety and they're struggling with their anxiety. Okay, there's a huge stigma around anxiety. Well, sometimes it's mistaken for anxiousness, or it's mistaken for fear. It's mistaken for stress, and all that can lead to anxiety. Again, I'm not a doctor, a therapist, any of that. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, PTSD, GAD, and MDD. And the reason I use GAD and MDD instead of just saying anxiety and depression is that's what I'm diagnosed with. That is what the doctors, and I mean doctors because I've been diagnosed multiple times, have diagnosed me with, is those two. So saying that you have anxiety and then turning out that you just don't like going to school, or that college is really hard right now, that's a different factor. That's not necessarily true anxiety. You don't want to start telling everybody that you have anxiety when it comes down to something like that. You maybe want to direct and focus on the source of your stress and work through it, like getting a counselor or getting a tutor to get additional help. And it's not curing anxiety, and you can't really say, I cured my anxiety through a tutor. No, you addressed an issue and a problem that you were having. when it comes down to mental illness and even your physical health, getting with a doctor to find out what is truly wrong is everything, because that gets you the proper treatment. That starts the trial and error process. There's nothing worse than thinking that you have something and finding out later on that you don't. I mean, and diagnoses do change over time. I was originally diagnosed ADD, and later on I was re-diagnosed ADHD. So your diagnoses can change. I mean, doctors do make mistakes, and that's why it's so important to work with a doctor, to let a doctor know how the medication's helping you or how it's not helping you. And if you don't trust them, to tell them, hey, I'm not trusting you on this. Can we try this? And if it gets bad enough, finding a different doctor. Because the more that you use the internet as a doctor, I can guarantee you this, you're going to end up treating a lot of the wrong stuff. And that's the reality of it. You got to remember that you are the most important person, but there's a reason that there are doctors. And the reason that they do go to as much schooling as they do, and they do as much as they do to actually try their best to diagnose us with what we're struggling with. Instead of us who are keyboard warriors sometimes going, do I have this? And let's face it, if we read something, we can convince ourselves that we have it. I mean, hypochondriacs do it all the time. I mean, the worst thing you can ever do is go to WebMD if you're sick and you have a cough. Next thing you know, you could have a heart attack, a brain tumor, cancer. I mean, it lists all these different things off that you can have. I mean, they got to cover their butt somehow, and I get it. But that's why you're going to a doctor and not the internet. That's why I can't stress it enough with people when they say, you know, how do I know if I'm diagnosed with something, or how do I know if I'm struggling with something? Go to your doctor. Go to your doctor and say, these are what my fears are. This is what I've read. This is what I'm struggling with. I don't know what's going on. Help me, please. And it's okay to ask for help. The strongest thing you can do is ask for help. If you're struggling out there, asking for help, strongest thing you can do. Because it means that you're truly at that point that you want help. And you can't be afraid of medication, because medication can be a tool in your life. You know, if somebody told me these over-the-counter pills are going to take care of you, you don't have to take Adderall anymore, I might try it with the help of my doctor, maybe. But odds are I'm going to stick to what works. I don't want to fuck up with works. What works, works. And if I'm functioning as a human being the way that I want to be able to function, that I feel the most productive, I feel the least amount of depression, I feel the least amount of anxiety, I don't want to screw with that. I don't want to go through an unnecessary battle. So if you are questioning, get with your doctor. Don't get with the internet. Don't even get with other people's videos. I mean, we share a lot of our experiences on YouTube or on different social media platforms to maybe have somebody out there that's struggling, that has been diagnosed with it, but doesn't know what to really do. They don't feel comfortable with their doctor, to let them know, hey, you're not alone. I mean, that's the whole nice thing about sharing, is to let others know that they're not alone. Not for somebody who goes, hey, I might have that. And if you think you do, again, that's what doctors are for. So set up an appointment with your doctor. And you know what? Sometimes finding the right doctor is going to involve driving an hour, 2 hours away for that appointment. But you know what? I would want to say this, that it's worth it. It's worth that drive. To having an amazing doctor that treats you and treats what you're going through the way that you need it to be treated, the way that you can connect together, worth it. Because you're the most important person in the world, and you can't ever forget that. I mean, that's why I started a nonprofit, Driven Together. It bridges the gap between a crisis hotline and therapy, just sharing tools, experiences, and resources. Because sometimes we need those coping tools, and it's trial and error to bounce off of other people, so that when we go back to our doctors, we can say, this is what I tried, this is what I tried, this is what I tried, this worked, what do you think of me trying this? I mean, it's all interaction that we do with our doctor. It's not just us word vomiting on our doctor. If you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, hit the like and subscribe button, comment down below. I mean, in the description, I have links to the mental health communities on Discord that I have. They're free resources. I have links down below to all the social medias that I'm on. I even have a link to BetterHelp if you want to try online therapy. I mean, it's trial and error to find out what works for you. Always is links to Amazon stuff that I use for anxiety or for depression, like fidget cubes and fidget spinners that help. They're coping tools. I mean, again, trial and error to find out what works for you. Hit that like and subscribe button. Let's do this together, because you're a BAMF. You're a badass motherfucker. You've made it through 100% of your worst days to make it through 2 today. And that's pretty damn amazing. We got this.